Thanks to everyone who has joined us. We're going to give everyone about 2 more minutes and then we'll get started. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly Caseman. I'm the Executive Director of Think Kids, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to Session 1 of the 2021 Regional Health and Hunger Summit Series. This is a virtual series as part of a larger project where we take a candid look at connections between the healthcare system and community resources that address hunger. For this series, we're focusing on 3 counties in our state, Boone, Lincoln, and Logan. Health and hunger are profoundly connected. Their systems should be too. You can find more information on our website, thinkkidswv.org, and on Think Kids Facebook page. And we hope you'll join the discussion with us, because now more than ever, in this moment, we need to unite in our efforts to ensure all West Virginians are as healthy as they can be with access to healthcare and nutritious food. There are a lot of challenges to this. I've met some great people in these counties who are leading efforts to build these bridges. And so we're glad you're here with us to meet them and join the conversation. Let's get started. Now, we know that a lot more West Virginians than usual are on the internet right now. And so if you get disconnected or have difficulties hearing, please know that this is being recorded and that will be shared on our social media sites tomorrow. Also, you'll have the opportunity to share your thoughts and ask questions at the end of the panel discussion. So go ahead and type any questions you have in the Q&A box while they're fresh in your mind if you'd like, and we'll get to them at the end. And with that, let's get underway by thanking our sponsors. Our main sponsor is the Palatine Foundation of Huntington, and we appreciate their generous financial support. Our community sponsors include Pride Community Services, the Salvation Army, and Unicare Health Plan of West Virginia. Here's our agenda for today's session. Food and hunger in my neighborhood. We'll begin with a brief look at some basic demographics about each of these counties that are part of this summit series. And then we'll turn the video over to our 3 presenters. And then we'll circle back to questions from both you, if you have them, and a few pre-prepared questions as well. And with that, let's begin by taking a brief look at Boone County. According to the US Census in 2019, Boone had a population estimate of 21,457 residents. Most of them were white, with fewer than 1% Black or multiracial. The median household income was $40,739. The median household income, according to the US Census in 2019, was $68,703 in 2019 in the United States. The US poverty rate in 2019 was 10.5%, down 1.3 percent points from 11.8 in 2018. But in Boone County in 2019, it was 18.9%. Similar in population and demographics is Lincoln County, with 20,409 residents in 2019, about 1,000 fewer residents than Boone County. Its population is mostly white, with a slightly smaller Black population and a slightly larger multiracial population. The median household income in 2019 was $42,345, and 19.7% of residents lived in poverty. Third of the three is Logan County. It had over 10,000 more residents than Lincoln in 2019, with 32,019 residents. It's a little more racially diverse, with nearly 96% of its population white, nearly 2% Black, and 1% multiracial. In 2019, the median household income was less than the two other counties. It's $36,168 a year. And they had a slightly higher poverty rate at 21.9%. This is twice the national poverty rate in 2019 at 10.5%. And so let's begin the conversation by introducing our first panelist. Kevin Hall is the interim director of Mountaineer Food Bank in Rock Branch. He has been in this current position for less than 1 year and previously served as the coordinator of senior hunger programs at Mountaineer Food Bank at the Gasaway headquarters. He is a graduate of West Virginia University with a BA in history and minoring in secondary education, athletic coaching education, and educational leadership. Kevin is a former resident of Morgantown, West Virginia, and a native of Leicester, West Virginia. He is a father of 3 beautiful children and an ordained minister. Kevin is West Virginia proud and loves representing his state and alma mater. Thanks for joining us today, Kevin.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you.
Oh, okay. Well, let me see. It says that you stopped the video.
Let me see. Try your video now.
Okay. Yes. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. I want to thank Kelly and the co-presenters for inviting us to be a part of this discussion on this morning in the Health and Hunger Series Summit Special. We are really glad to be here. I want to thank Laura Phillips, who helped develop some of the information that I'll be bringing to you today. And thank Mountaineer Food Bank and our director, Chad Morrison, for giving me the opportunity to be the voice of Mountaineer Food Bank in some of these events that are occurring around the state. So Mountaineer Food Bank, we are located in Gasaway, West Virginia. We started in 1981. We fight hunger across the state of West Virginia through a network of feeding programs and also providing food and resources to your local food pantries or agencies that work along with Mountaineer Food Bank. We have about 48 feeding programs in 48 counties that we serve in West Virginia, and 480 feeding programs across the state. So 480 pantries, kitchens, shelters, seniors programs we serve. You can go to the next slide, Kelly. I'm gonna get in my rhythm here in a second. So we serve 48 of the 55 counties in West Virginia. 43 of them we serve directly. Those are the counties that are in green. We share some counties with the other food bank in the state facing hunger that primarily serves Lincoln and Logan counties. We do share Boone County, and we do a lot of activities out of here in our Rock Branch location in Boone County. So what's the difference between a food bank and a food pantry? Mainly look at your food bank as like a regional grocery um, distribution center. We provide food and other resources to your local food pantries, which you have in your communities. We are a nonprofit organization. Our staffs are paid at the food bank, but most of the people who do the groundwork that are affiliated with us are local food pantries in your neighborhood, churches, other civic organizations. They provide they provide food to your local communities, and most of them are made up of volunteers. Uh, Something happened. Are we still on?
We are. Hold on just a second. The PowerPoint is on a timer.
Oh,
And
okay.
so it keeps jumping ahead, and I want to turn the timer off.
All right.
So it's just a slight pause, everyone. Here we go.
All right. All right, so we provide food to your local food pantries that work in your communities. Most of them are made up of volunteers that help us distribute food in the local communities. So they're affiliated with us. They are agencies affiliated with Mountaineer Food Bank, and we help supply the food that is supplied in those communities. Okay. So the key activities that we do outside of food distribution is we source food across the country. We're part of a network of food banks across the country, part of the Feeding America organization, which helps us source food across the country from vendors, helps us source it from local growers. We try to support the local growers here in West Virginia. Some of the things we do is we engage community members and volunteers. We raise funds, whether it be corporate or individual. So we seek funding to help us to get the food that we supply to your local food pantries. We do look in healthy options across the state to provide people across the state with healthy food options, and we also raise awareness and drive support to create change. So we have a few different programs which we'll discuss later that we use to do that. And you can see, based on this map, the agencies that are close to near you. Affiliated with Mountaineer Food Bank, again, 480 individual pantries. Some of them call themselves food banks just because the name is sometimes miscued, but this is a map of how many places we directly take food to or bring food to their communities so that they can serve it to their local individuals. Okay, so hunger in West Virginia is this tells us that 1 in 7 West Virginians are hungry every day. 13.9% of West Virginia is food insecure. 1 in 5 children struggle with food insecurity, and if you look, it takes about over 114 million dollars to support the needs of hungry people just in our state. So Boone County is one of the counties that we share with facing hunger. And you can see this is based on the Feeding America um, uh, map that you can see the food insecurity in Boone County. 78% are below SNAP, 22% are above the SNAP level, but still considered in poverty. Now, this is not everybody in the county. This is just those who are food insecure. It takes annual budget shortfall of 1 million, nearly $2 million just to support food programs or insecurity in Boone County. And then we also included Lincoln, and we have done the same thing here to show you how many people, 17.9% are food insecure in Lincoln County. So nearly 1 out of 5 are food insecure in that county alone. Nearly $2 million also to support the annual food shortage budget there. And lastly, but not least, of course, Logan County, it's nearly $3 million of annual food budget shortfall. 18% of the residents in Logan County are food insecure, which means they don't know where their next meal may be coming from. They need help. So again, Mountaineer Food Bank, we have over 480 agencies in 48 counties. Several thousands of folks, volunteers, people in the communities are what drives the work that we do in those counties. You can become an agency within Mountaineer Food Bank. We require a 501c3, an application that you can find online. But we do our best to reach out to local agencies, to find new agencies all the time across the state to help the food shortcomings in the communities around our state. So MFB outreach, we have some programs that we do. One of our largest programs is our mobile food pantry. What we do is we take a refrigerated truck, we drive up to a location that has been pre-designated, working with a local food pantry or a local agency that is supporting. We drive our truck there, we unload food in the parking lot, and we give food into food desert areas across the state. So what we do is we have box food, or we box them on site to feed people in those communities, in their communities, so that they don't have to travel. So we do that quite often, up to 16 times a week at some points. We do our mobile pantry programs across the state. Our Veterans Table program is currently still in development, but we have already started some of our sites. We have 3 VA centers across the state that we work with: the Beckley VA Center, the Clarksburg VA Center. We do an average of 1,000 boxes a month to support veterans. Our Veterans Table program is open to any veteran, and also we have given boxes to the widows and different people of veteran families. We provide them a food box every month that they pick up at one of these local VA centers. So I work at Rock Branch. Mountaineer Food Bank Rock Branch is one of our newest locations. We opened last year. The Rock Branch location was put together by the governor and the state government to bring a food bank into the Charleston, into the Canal Valley. So we share a facility with Facing Hunger, the other food bank. Rock Branch, we primarily work in Kanawha, Boone, and Jackson counties to promote additional food services in that area. The services that we currently provide out of Rock Branch are free services, and we do push a lot of food into Boone County, Kanawha, and Jackson. Another outreach program is our Kids Market program. It's a fresh initiative kids market. We do it one-day event. It's held within an elementary school. We try to show students there the nutrition and the benefits of produce, and we try to also educate them on agriculture and how food is produced. Along with, we let them know about local vendors. We try to depend on them to help provide some of the products. We give each student 7 to 10 pounds of fresh produce and some recipes that they can use that are kid friendly. Things that kids normally don't like. Our Fresh Initiative program has gotten a lot of kids turned on to things like carrots and potatoes and peppers and things that kids normally wouldn't be interested in. But once they're educated and have their own, they usually come around to those fresh produce items. Our CSFP program is what the program that I used to maintain for Mountaineer Food Bank. It is a senior program where we provide a food box to seniors across the state. We started out when I started out with the CSFP program, we had over 2,700 boxes that went to 5 counties across the state. That was expanded last year to 9 counties, and recently we found out that the program is again expanding, almost doubling in size. So what we do with the senior program is we provide a box of nutritious items. They're usually low fat, low sugar, low sodium, made and catered to students, and it provides them up to 5 days of meals throughout the month. So we help that shortcoming that a lot of seniors face when it comes to running out of money towards the end of the month. As you can see, Mountaineer Meals, that's a program that we do in Braxton County. We maintain that program in libraries. It reduces the stigma by facilitating a program in the space where children gather. So we take the food source to them. And all kids that are in that area or in that facility are invited to be a part of that program. Feeding Families Prime is a brand new program that we started. It is to help with pre-existing medical conditions such as diabetes, hypertension, high blood pressure, obesity. The program is free to the sites that we've started it in. It is just a piloted program, so it's out there now, but it's not widespread. But what we do is we take healthy food options. We provide classes, exercise programs. We try to talk about healthy living, not only healthy eating, in the Feeding Families Prime program. The backpack program is some of you may be familiar with. This is a program that's all over the state, mainly when school is in session. We, of course, things changed during COVID, but what we do is provide food for dependent children on the weekends. We send a lot of agencies send bags of food. A lot of schools send bags of food home with kids who may not be able to eat over the weekend or facing that food insecurity. Anyone in the school is eligible for that, to take home a bag of food every week. Some even provide food over holidays and long vacation times between school. So it is a very beneficial program to our children. Examples of how we move food in Boone County. One thing that we're doing, we've connected with Boone County community organizations and some of our local pantries to push more food into Boone County. Last year, we did about 250,000 pounds of food into Boone County. We are at that level currently. So we've already met that level in the 4 months of this year so far. We have sites across the Route 3 corridor, and we also do some of our mobile distributions at Scott High School and Amazing Grace Fellowship. So one thing that we'd like you to see is that before COVID, we had about 250,000 insecure, food insecure, struggling with hunger individuals in our state. That number has moved up to around 324,000. So it's a 30% increase. During the height of the pandemic, we provided about 1,800 food boxes per day. These boxes were were built and produced with the help of the National Guard and the Mountaineer Food Bank. We took those boxes to multiple locations around the state. I don't know if you remember, but when COVID first started, of course, we everybody was afraid to go anywhere, to touch anything, but it did not stop our programs at the food bank. We kept pushing because we knew that in that time, even more people would be hungry or affected. And that shows you the character of the individuals and the staff that's working at the food bank, who went out and pressed their way to help others in our community. That's what we mean about being West Virginia strong. So the COVID response from MFB, one thing that we stressed was safety. We went over safety protocols. We looked at things from the CDC. Many of you know, all kinds of information was out there at the time, but we wanted to make sure that our volunteers and our staff were safe. And at times we had to halt travel depending on the levels of COVID rate in the county. We used a Harvard map to decide on how we move food around the state. This is the Brown School map here of, but here we use these maps to decide where we're going to move food during the pandemic. It's been challenging at times, but we've developed a great strategy on how to move food in these areas, especially our mobile food program, and also our local agencies that remained open to support the needs of their communities. So we did develop a COVID response team. We did develop emergency food boxes, the EFB boxes. They were 25 to 35 pounds, and agencies were allowed to get them and create their plan on how to distribute those boxes. A lot of our agencies became drive-throughs if they had the space available. That was a great thing that happened, but we produced and distributed thousands of food boxes during that time. The food distributions, we required our people who are helping us at our food distributions to wear personal protective equipment. We used skeleton crews, less volunteers. We made sure spacing was around. And also we did this with our summer feeding program. So some ways that we hope that others will get involved. We organize fundraisers. We need volunteers across the state. No funding too big or too small. We've had people bring us change at some of our events, but we appreciate everything that people do to support the hunger needs. You can go to our website at mountaineerfoodbank.org, and it'll tell you about more how you can support if you choose to, or become involved with our food bank. And hunger does not discriminate. Don't forget that. We sometimes think that because someone drives a nice car that they are secure in their food, or because they live in a nice neighborhood. But those things changed, and COVID really showed us that in all of our communities. So if you want to donate to us, you can follow the address on the screen or go to mountaineerfoodbank.org.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And I know that I can hear that you all are really very busy this morning, so we appreciate your time. But, when we first started working with Mountaineer Food Bank on the Health and Hunger Project last year, I really didn't realize just how many partners you had, which is over 400 across the state, which logistically must be really difficult. And just the sheer number of programs and the different programs that you implement across the state. It's really interesting. So we will, when we post this video and more information about the project, we'll share on how folks can, the process to go through to become a volunteer and how they can donate as well. So thank you, Kevin. We'll move on to our next presenter, which is David Roberts, a family and development, community development agent with West Virginia University Extension Service. David is an expert at the forefront of health and relationship education in West Virginia communities. He has been a WVU Extension agent for 10 years, providing services in Lincoln and Boone counties. In 2016, he co-authored the article Community-Based Diabetes Screening and Risk Assessment in Rural West Virginia, which was published in the Journal of Diabetes Research. Previously, David supervised counseling services at Lincoln County Schools. He attended both West Virginia University and West Virginia University Institute of Technology. Welcome, David.
Kelly, could you make me maybe host for the video to start? Or co-host? Oh, you're muted, Kelly. If you're was asking me a question, I apologize.
No, I'm just experiencing the same technical difficulties. Just give me 1 second and we'll get you up.
Not a problem at all. I understand.
I thought we had this beat before the session began.
Right. Well, we did. We went through it, had it all lined up. That's the beauty of
How about now?
life. Let's see. Looky there. Okay, so thank you very much, Kelly and Kevin, for sharing about everything that Mountaineer Food Bank has going on. As we kind of get through some of the presentations and conversations of the day, I think we're going to find out we intersect on a lot of our programming, and that is really the key to what we're trying to do and reach and connect some of our most vulnerable families. It does take a lot of partnerships and collaboration. I am David Roberts. I am the Family and Community Development Agent in Lincoln County. For a few years, I had the pleasure of serving Lincoln and Boone County. And then, as Kelly had said, I've worked in a couple different projects throughout Southern West Virginia prior to coming to WVU Extension. Now, just a little bit about, I guess, Extension service. And if you're not familiar, but we are located in all counties, all 55 counties in West Virginia as a local extension service through West Virginia University. Now, a lot of people are often familiar with some of our programs. 4-H is a big one. We are responsible and oversee the 4-H programming in West Virginia. We are also often known for our garden calendars that come out every year and a lot of information around agriculture. But like I said, while we get to work in those areas, because all units do kind of work on all issues, but in the Family and Community Development Unit, a lot of our members have issues around food insecurities, kind of a little higher on their chart, I guess, maybe, or programming that kind of not higher on their chart, but engage in programming that more directly focus on those issues. I said we are in, as far as extension goes, in all counties. Some of our partners within Extension, we do have the Family Nutrition Program that many may be familiar with. Our Family Nutrition Program has coverage now in 40 counties, I believe, across the state. And some of the numbers that kind of dictate or indicate where those individuals may be located, as Kevin was talking about, looking at Lincoln and Boone County, for example, did have both of those counties at about 70% of the population qualifying for SNAP benefits. SNAP and FNAP are the primary funders for our family nutrition program. So, in the counties that have a higher percentage population meeting those guidelines is where those interventions are focused. Now, I had mentioned being able to serve Lincoln and Boone for a while. And at that time, myself and we had two members of the family nutrition program that also served Lincoln and Boone. And we was able to work very well together. One is our, within the family nutrition program is Sherry Flynn. Sherry Flynn serves as our youth nutrition outreach instructor. And For a lot of our area through Lincoln and Boone, Sherry's kind of a local legend, a rock star in nutrition education. She goes to each of the schools on a rotating basis, but right now she's serving the elementary schools in Lincoln and Boone County, targeting grades 3, 4, and 5, and bringing lessons about nutrition, having opportunities to try different foods. Now, this last year obviously has been a challenge as we've not been able to get into the schools. So we'll talk a little bit about some of our COVID relief efforts, but historically, like I said, Sherry brings her program into the school where the kids can taste different foods from different fresh fruits and vegetables. We also have a health educator, Heather Cook, who works with some of our teens and adult populations and does a lot of cooking classes and demonstrations. Again, a lot of when we're talking about with the adults, there are some guidelines where we really try to be laser focused and target what interventions we're putting in different areas. And it really worked well with the three of us being able to kind of complement each other where we're working, knowing what's going on. When Sherry was in the program, if hearing of some different activities that Heather or I may be able to connect with, was able to offer those interventions with Heather and I. You know, if we was out in the community working on a project and heard about some resources that we could share, you know, with Sherry to take to the school. So it really worked well, or it does work well. It's kind of a blanket approach, again, just with that partnership of what's going on. Now, with really both departments, myself and with Family Nutrition, or Sherry and Heather, and Logan also, like I said, Logan has the Family Nutrition Program and a nutrition outreach instructor, Cheryl Davis, and Dana Wright is the extension agent in Logan County, and again, within the Family and Community Development Service. So with all of us and then programming that we're taking to the community, so we try to take kind of a multi-pronged approach. So a lot of it is the educational piece. So we'll bring programming in that has a lesson, and all the lessons are research-based and vetted through the university. So, you know, a lot of the programs that we typically offer is, you know, we have a Dining with Diabetes program that focuses on living with diabetes and focuses on a lot of health and nutrition specifically around that disease. Cooking with Heart is a very similar program, but again, looking at some of the issues around heart disease. With our Family Nutrition Program, you know, we have an Eating Smart Being Active that is brings a lot of information about recipes and healthy recipes, and again, ways to kind of show and cook and allow participants to sample. And then, you know, even with the elementary, some of that show me or being able to see, and like I said, not only talking about nutrition and trying to make that part of a normal conversation, but allowing them to taste and touch and experience that food. And that's, you know, kind of one of the other parts is that show me, or the demonstration piece. All of our programs, we try to look at multiple approaches. So we'll either have a cooking demonstration or if appropriate, actually lead it as a cooking class and have the supplies for individuals to prepare the meal so they can, one, prepare it and taste it. You know, that's a lot of the comments we hear in some of the classes is, I don't like healthy food. I don't like the, you know, we had a gentleman say, all I can eat is cardboard and mustard, and I don't like mustard. So we tried to take a look at a lot of our recipes, and especially recipes that we kind of hold dear in Appalachia, because we do like that strong taste, and look at different ways that we can incorporate different herbs and spices to get a little stronger flavor, but also keep that, looking at our nutritional guidelines. And then we also, the other part is kind of our connections. And that's kind of the third prong, and being able to be actively engaged in the community, being able to connect with other programs and really rely on a lot of those partnerships. One of the activities I know that we've been able to implement in recent years is the Kids Farmers Market that Kevin was talking about. That's kind of real strong and has been a real positive promotion or partnership. We're able to take a lot of that produce and product and set it up in a elementary school or sometimes a community center. I believe, and I said when we talked with Michael Tierney in a little bit, we was able to take one to the Big Ugly Community Center and set it up for some of the participants to kind of go through, give them a little tokens, a little lesson. They can select some of the product, and again, try to have some resources there to show and help prepare and what to do with that product once they do take it home. Excuse me. Some of the other partnerships or connections, like I said, all of our areas of extension do work on focusing, addressing some different issues of food insecurity. I know many of our 4-H programs also serve as summer feeding sites. So, Boone County, for instance, for the last several years has had 4 day camps, 4 weekly day camps throughout the county at different parts, each of those serving as a summer feeding site to be able to help get food into the area, in addition to the residential camps that also, again, serve as summer feeding sites and pushing that healthy meal, I guess, if you will, kind of as a secondary, but always making that available, an option, kind of normalizing that experience. So that, that's kind of a piece of that. Some of the others, like I said, we were just talking about with different connections or partnerships. Again, I know our family nutrition program has been very active, this most active recently with the pharmacy program, which is connecting some of the farmers markets, some of our community health centers, looking at different ways to maybe push and promote almost a prescription, if you will, of healthy or fresh fruits and vegetables, and then connecting those with some of the local producers and pushing and promoting that activity or that connection, so that can be aware. And then also, again, Heather, Sherry, or I coming in and some different ways to help know what to do with that product. It has been a little bit of a challenge, as everybody has experienced in the last year, with some of the restrictions of being able to be together in person. A lot of our programming has been recreated or retooled to be available online or virtually. For example, our Dining with Diabetes program and Cooking with Heart have both went to a virtual delivery. And, with that, we're able to talk about the lessons or talk about the information, talk about how, the nutrition relates to the disease. We do have the cooking demonstration still, but we're not able to share that tasting experience. And while I look forward to being together again and, being able to break bread together and essentially try some of the recipes, we have been, or I have been pleasantly surprised at some of our responses with the virtual delivery and just being able to make the program more accessible to a wider audience. So I believe as we start coming back to some in-person programs, we'll look at being able to keep this somewhat blended and still offer some of the virtual, because in our areas, transportation is an issue. Not that all, and many, there's still a population that may not have access to some of the technology, but in a recent virtual Dining with Diabetes class that we held in March, typically in person, 15 people is a large class. Able to virtually, we had 62 register, averaged 43 each week on the participation, and had participants from 19 counties across the state. So, that was pretty interesting. We'll continue that model and kind of take a look and see as some of the information on the backside as we're collecting some demographics of, are we hitting some of the populations that are most vulnerable? And then if not, how can we tweak that delivery to make sure that we are, in touch with some of that information that is coming through. We look and use some of the census data to try and push that, just to make sure we're on target there. So that's a little bit as far as, who we are and some of the programs that we have and what we're doing locally, and a little bit on how we have shifted our focus during in response to COVID. So.
Thanks, David. I was really curious about the pivot to online and if you had issues with broadband in your neck of the woods.
So yeah, that is a challenge. Like I said, we're finding that a lot of families do have connection, and especially being able to use even some of the mobile devices. And as more people move toward mobile devices as their primary phone, then essentially been able to use cellular data, which was able to connect some that really didn't have the broadband or internet. Like I said, as we start collecting some of that information, though, it's going to be interesting to see, again, are we able to target some of that vulnerable population that we want to make sure we're not missing in this.
Right. A quick question from Carla. Can you repeat the name of the health educator from Logan County?
Cheryl Davis, I believe. And like I said, as far as reaching out to any of your county extension services, and I apologize, I should have that up, but that is a real quick search of county offices, and that that oftentimes are located in the courthouse, and I know Logan County is.
Okay, well, we'll definitely share her contact information when we share this information online tomorrow.
All right.
Keep an eye out for that, Carla. You're welcome. And last but certainly not least is Michael Tierney. Michael, is your video working?
Yes.
Yay, success. Okay, great. Let me introduce to you Michael Tierney, Executive Director of Step by Step. Michael happily transplanted to the coal fields of West Virginia that he fell in love with as an intern with Robert F. Kennedy Memorial at age 20 in 1978. He and his wife and children are proud land stewards of 125 acres of mountain land in Big Ugly Creek in Lincoln County. For nearly 33 years, he has served as the executive director of Step by Step, a regional community education and leadership organization with a focus on children and family programs serving rural communities. He holds degrees from Brandeis and Harvard universities. Recently, he co-taught the graduate seminar, West Virginia Activists, Stories of Social Change through the Marshall University Graduate Humanities Program. Thanks again for being with us here today, Michael.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank Kelly and Kids First for inviting me. This is a great series. And I'm just putting my timer on so I keep track here. I also want to thank Kevin and Dave for their context setting, and particularly thank Dave, who I worked with on that counseling program probably 15 years ago now in Lincoln County, which is a wonderful program. And then we've worked with Extension since 96, when Step by Step helped bring Energy Express. We started 4 sites of Energy Express in Lincoln County back, including Big Ugly Community Center, which is a reclaimed elementary school 1 mile from where my wife and I have lived actually almost 34 years in southern Lincoln County. I also would like to welcome, if you notice a different kind of spelling in the participants, I'd like to welcome Atanasov, who is a Roma educator from Bulgaria, who is checking in with us today. And if pandemic travel will allow, he will be coming to West Virginia for a month as part of a community organizing fellowship exchange in October. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that the vaccine spread and people are able to travel again by the fall. As Kelly mentioned, I started Step by Step as a writing, leadership, and political witness group of youth in the child welfare system in 1988. By 1995, our focus shifted to building capacities with families and in communities to support their children so they wouldn't end up in the child welfare system. And we developed a program called West Virginia Dreamers, first piloted at the Big Ugly Community Center, formerly the Big Ugly Elementary School that had closed, and we reclaimed in '95. And the larger purpose is working with parents and allies of kids to help children discover and follow their dreams from early childhood through high school graduation. And at this point, having done this for close to 30 years, we're also seeing the kids of the kids we worked with 25 years ago, and supporting them as they start their own families. We do this largely through after school and summer programs from which parent and youth leadership programs grow. We have 15 sites across Logan and Southern Lincoln, and also have worked in Charleston since the late 90s. And we focus particularly on housing developments. And we have a teen center on the west side with my colleague, Michael Farmer's church, Risen City. And so our goal is that we want every child to know that they have multiple caring adults that they can identify for support. We've done resiliency groups since the late 90s. This has evolved into the Strengths Core mentoring program, where at any given time we have over 400 youth who have one-to-one mentoring year-round. And then just to give you a little idea of the population we work with the schools to identify the kids they're most afraid of falling through the cracks. 66% of those youth are not living with their biological families, largely due to the opioid epidemic, which has gotten worse within the pandemic. One of our participants saw his dad die of an overdose 3 days after his dad got out of jail last spring. And we have kids who have already lost parents and other caregivers due to the opioid epidemic, also lose grandparents to COVID and are yet another relative or neighbor caring for them. So we have kids that are deeply, deeply at risk. In addition to after school and summer programs, we have a major focus on national service. At any given time, we have 40 AmeriCorps mentors, 15 full-year Vista, and 3 summer Vista. And if anybody ever wants to talk about how national service can be a tremendous way to build capacity in your communities and reach kids, particularly around hunger issues, Summer Vista is wonderful. And they are very happy you get somebody for 10 weeks full-time, whose purpose is to this year also include academic remediation, but the goal is they're being placed with communities that want to expand access for summer food. So some of the things we've learned about hunger through the years, and particularly during this pandemic. First, as terrible as the statistics that Kelly and then Kevin shared with us about as much as 20% of the children in our counties going hungry, those countywide statistics hide pockets of extreme poverty in our communities. And we got a lot of hollers and we got a lot of neighborhoods where it is much, much, much worse. Because we focus on places like Buffalo Creek and Logan County, Francis Creek and Big Ugly, in Lincoln and with the housing developments in Charleston, from 90 to 100% of the children we serve are living below the poverty level. And that level of isolation certainly have, if anyone's ever come to visit Big Ugly, you do feel like you're driving off at the end of the world, and you get how isolated from resources folks are there. Well, in terms of service and access and dealing with food deserts, it's not a lot better if you live in a housing development in Charleston. A number of those were built up on ridges. South Park, where we've worked since the mid-aughts, is halfway between Kanawha City proper and the city dump. And the transportation's unreliable there. Hardly any of those families have got cars. So the access to food is not, even though they're technically not that far from grocery stores, is not a whole lot better than when you get into the deep country. So the food desert issue is a major issue. During the first spring of the pandemic, Buffalo Creek lost its one grocery store. So you've got families that may have over an hour drive, again, may not have reliable transportation, and the only place along the creek is a Family Dollar. And we all know how challenging it is to serve healthy meals based on the ingredients and goods you can get there. And then during the COVID emergency, the outreach programs just don't reach a lot of these families. If a community school system had kids go to a local school as a pickup point, again, that might have been a 45 to 60-minute drive. And our most low-income families don't have the reliable transportation to do that. And then even where there were bus route drop-offs, if you, one of the more poignant stories, we had an AmeriCorps that was riding along to help the school with delivering last spring. And there was, one of the deliveries was for 5 kids, and it was several days. I think at that point we're still doing 2 days a week delivery, but it still was like 3 days worth of food packets for 5 kids, and a 9-year-old, a skinny 9-year-old showed up. So my AmeriCorps colleague walked with him. They had to go down the hill from the 2-lane rural highway, back up a hill, and they found out why mom wasn't there. Mom had a baby and she had a couple of toddlers. So literally this 9-year-old was the member of the family most capable of going to get the food. And of course, that 9-year-old was not going to be carrying that amount of food. We know there are kids and parents, single parents like this across our counties. And there on in, because that had been identified, we made sure that things were timed so that volunteer could always go and help that kid walk down and up the hill to get the food home. But we know that there's a lot of families that just may not have had a 9-year-old that they felt safe to have do the 10-minute walk or felt comfortable having them along Route 10. So we know even if a school's going the extra mile, if we have this crisis again, and we may, even if schools go those extra miles, there are families that we're not going to reach. So how did we respond when COVID hit? First call I got the afternoon that the governor announced the schools were shutting down was from Tammy Bowling, my Force of Nature Big Ugly Community Center director, who first joined our staff in 1997 as an AmeriCorps that we had on loan to us from Save the Children. And Tammy calls me and said, can we still feed the kids? Big Ugly, and then also up in Charleston, where we've been working with the housing developments, we have not missed a week getting food out to kids. Tammy, currently it's on Wednesday, but every Wednesday, Tammy and her staff do a bus run after the school day, because there's still a lot of families where kids are going virtually and they're not getting the food at home. And she takes out several days worth of food, and she takes out family learning packets. And when Dave was talking about the creativity of Extension's program, families are not just hungry for food. We're talking about hunger today, but they've been isolated and they've been desperate for just fun stuff that they can do at home. So people of our staff has dropped off everything from magnifying glasses that a school was going to throw out because the science kits were obsolete, and for kids to do nature scavenger hunts. But we've also had, kids have books that go home so they can talk about racial justice issues after George Floyd's murder last summer. And we've seen a huge uptick in parent participation and guardian participation under COVID. Families very much want to have life-giving, enjoying, stress-busting activities at home. And one of the things I've always loved about Extension is they do a wonderful job of weaving that. You get your lessons about what's healthy, but the kids and the parents have a lot of fun. Another thing that we, and I also want to stress, this is possible. God forbid this happens again, but it may. You can do this safely. We've had people going out through the very worst of surges. We have had a few staff members get COVID. None of that, that's all through family members at home. None of that is spread through work. No coworkers, if people did get COVID, have passed it on to anybody at work. And we followed the CDC. We wore masks, we take temperatures, we sanitize, we practice social distancing, and every one of our staff members got tested every 2 weeks. This can and it does work. We do not have to abandon families because of a crisis like this. The other thing that we did is in the counties where, with the school drop-offs, where people had to come to the school sites, is we got some gas cards through some COVID relief funds and tried to support community neighborhood volunteers, kind of like the old neighborhood ward captains you'd have in a city area, but kind of a holler captain. And people picked up food for other families. I do not know if that's legal. I think you're supposed to show up, but one of the things I think we could all work with is helping Office of Child Nutrition apply for a waiver that we figure out some way to certify a volunteer. So we vet them and people aren't embezzling food, but people have been so generous in trying to help their neighbors during this crisis. And we can support them doing that by simple things like gas cards, which state funding will not allow. We've been able, the private donors and a couple of foundations have been willing to have us cover that. But state funding, our state funded grants have not allowed us to support families in that way. But we can organize in the future to make sure that we reach the most isolated families. I can guarantee from having lived up some very isolated hollers, Marrowbone Creek in Mingo County back in 1978, Big Ugly since 1987, that we will always find community people that are willing to help their neighbors and do everything they can. We just got to organize that so it's systemic and people aren't left behind. The other thing that I'm heartened to see a little bit of an uptick, but we can work to expand summer food programs. Prior to the pandemic, those of us, probably everybody on this call, realizes we've seen a real decline in the number of people that, the number of sites serving food. At peak, we had 5 Energy Express sites in Lincoln County. Dave and I have struggled to make sure there were the resources and the collaborations to have 1 to 2 over the last half dozen years. I'm glad to hear that Lincoln County Schools has gone up to 2. Big Ugly has had a summer food program every year since 1996. But in most of our counties, if you look at 15 years ago compared to today, there are fewer summer food sites, and there's no excuse for that. The Office of Child Nutrition is the most wonderful branch of state government to work with. They will do everything to help people provide food to kids and communities, and it just takes a little bit of collaboration. And we have school systems that do not play well with others and haven't figured out collaboration, and then we have school systems that are tremendous. I love working with Logan County schools, and they've really gone a lot of extra miles. Another response we've had, and I think this is a real opportunity right now, is people have wanted to get back to gardening. Dave has done canning workshops with us over the years, and his colleagues have done cooking classes at different times. But Step by Step also sponsors the Lincoln of Grow Appalachia, which is a Berea College-based program. Right now, we have about 100 gardeners, most of them half of them since the pandemic. And people are recognizing that some of them go out and some realize that having a core of food that they're growing at home provide them more security. And while it's been challenging because we haven't been able to get together for face-to-face workshops, our Grow Appalachia Facebook page just took off, and gardeners, veteran gardeners offering advice to younger gardeners, posting and reposting some great workshops. Different extension agents around the state have done, where we've had dozens and dozens of people download YouTube videos and view them, and that's worked really well. Cooking classes. As Dave and Heather and Dana Wright, who's another wonderful force of nature, have done workshops through the year. Big Ugly, COVID, we haven't been able to gather people mass to mass for that. It just, even with a big gym at Big Ugly, it's not enough social distancing. But we've had recipe contests. We've developing videotapes of local cook their recipes. We've engaged a wonderful nutritionist, Rowan Zoller, who's also a caterer in Charleston, to provide healthy substance advice, dollars to send home the ingredients for families to replicate the meal. And I do want to give a shout. I've got to look up in my things. There's an extension agent in the northern part of the state who actually has gone to healthy meals you can make from Family Dollar, including starting with cream of whatever, which is a recipe for using powdered milk so you can avoid those high sodium stews. I guess the thing that I really want to stress is I would love to see this crisis bring us together to collaborate level and say there's no excuse to not have starting the summer food program, at least in every middle school community. If we could set that as a goal, most kids don't live that far from their local middle school, and then do the problem solving that I talked about, of how to reach out to families who, for whatever reason, their kids are not going to come in to a regular summer program. I think that those means, and Kelly, if anybody had any specific questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them, but I think I'm done in less than my 20 minutes.
I think that we do have one response to you from John, who says, Bobby Kennedy was right about Appalachia, Michael, when he said all this marvelous potential when speaking of the region. The community people I am working with are brilliant.
Yeah, and Bobby Kennedy, a month before he was assassinated, David Frost asked him what he would like his epitaph to be, which is kind of chilling in retrospect. And he paraphrased Camus and said, perhaps this world is a world in which children suffer, but we can lessen the number of suffering children. And if you do not do this, who will do this? And I hope we have an upswing on leaders that will call us to task in that way.
You have one more comment from Carla, who said, Energy Express is a tremendous asset to communities, and my daughter became a teacher because of her participation as an AmeriCorps Vista.
And the thing I want to emphasize with Energy Express is you can build on Energy Express. Transportation is there for kids to come. Energy Express, for folks who aren't familiar, kids come into read and feed program. Kids come in for breakfast, have 3 or 4 hours of reading instruction, messy arts tied with reading, get to play around a little bit, and then lunch. What we have done at Big Ugly over the years is we've had a second shift of folks come in and do messy science and other kinds of things that don't fit within the Energy Express curriculum. And then we partner with the school system. We pay the bus driver, but they provide bus and gas. We've been able to negotiate that with all 3 counties we work in. And we're able to offer some additional timing. That's where our cooking classes, that's where Heather from Lincoln Extension has come and done cooking classes over the years. So if you've got a building block like that, you can have health fairs when families come in to see all the fun things their kids did during the summer. It is a huge, huge base for layering on other services and resources.
Great, thank you. Thank you, all 3 of you. I've asked all the questions that I've seen in the Q&A box. If you have any more, you're more than welcome to type them in. We're going to ask some questions that came up as we were preparing for this session. So let's get started with those. Let me see if I can all three of you turn on your video now? Oh, great. Okay, let's get started. All of you in your respective organizations and professions work to address food insecurity and poor nutrition. When it comes to hunger and diet, what is the biggest challenge we face to improving access to healthy food in West Virginia's rural communities? What do you think? Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. One thing that we've done with Mountaineer Food Bank, and this has been a sort of a blessing between both of the last two administrations federally, is we are getting a lot of fresh produce into rural communities, and we've been able to do it throughout the winter months. So in the places that we serve, we've been making sure that we're not only taking the proteins and things like that people need, but we have pushed fresh produce into those communities. So a lot of our mobiles, a lot of our distributions include those items.
And, one of the things that maybe Michael even mentioned was some of the layering of programming, that we do. He mentioned some of the efforts to kind of look at, what stores may be available in an area and kind of targeting those and seeing what kind of programs we can kind of build off of that, or, how you can build a healthier meal. Possibly coming out of, dollar stores, as we're losing some of our local grocery stores. We work some at and with some of the local food distribution points of, trying to look ahead and see what may be in the box that week or that month, and putting together some different cooking demos. But like I said, just kind of layering those, because a lot of times if you just put up a shingle that says, hey, we're having a healthy cooking class, or come learn about your health, your participation rate is not stellar. So almost trick them into it. But like I said, try to find where they are and layer that information in.
I'm going to suggest two major things. One is, although this series is an example of an effort to combat this, is we're still very siloed between different systems and agencies. I've had the pleasure of working with Dave for a number of years. Dave gets collaboration, but I've worked in other counties where people don't. There are school systems that will bend over backwards to allow community nonprofits to layer on. Even at the best, though, during the pandemic, things have been so stressful for folks and people have been so exhausted. It's been rare that people have put as a number one priority to bring all the partners in at the earliest planning stage, where we could have the broadest range of creativity to bring a variety of resources to bear. So somehow we've got to play up that that's got, even though it takes a little more time to begin with, having the players at the table, virtual or other, and I think Zoom will help, but having the players at a virtual table so we can see all of the resources and all of the gaps and figure out who's not going to get served, or who's not, and people around the table, somebody's going to be able to have an out-of-the-box idea of how we don't lose all the way up at Curtis at the end of Buffalo Creek, or all the way up Francis Creek, that we don't leave them behind. And then the second thing is, as far as information and sharing, we've got to deal with broadband. We've concentrated on Facebook because even, I live in an area where there's no cell reception for half an hour, most directions. And really, in one direction, we don't really get it again till you go all the way up to Hamlin, which is an hour away from me. But people still manage to have enough internet access that their cell phones are their best friends, and they download little YouTube videos and little games, and they check Facebook. We have not moved beyond more, the kids have, but the adults have not moved to more sophisticated and varied means of social media. But Facebook is an excellent way to reach parents and then grandparents who at least sign up so they can see pictures of their grandkids. And it's a great way to get information out there. And we both have to be more creative about doing that. But in the larger thing, even though there was some increase in schools working, again, I have to say hats off to Logan County. They made sure every kid had internet access. They got a big grant and made sure every kid had internet access for schooling during the pandemic. But, we're really not going to be able to have a leveled playing field for people to have access to information until we make sure that everybody can afford easy access to internet.
Thanks, all three. And I want to piggyback on two of Michael's points, then move to question two. First, last year when we worked on the Health and Hunger Summit and we started trying to reach out to pantries, we found the best way to get in touch with them was via Facebook. That's where their updated information was. That's where you found the contact person, because it's important to remember as we talk infrastructure that many of these folks are volunteers and they're older. And when you start talking about the pandemic and health issues, they're not going to be open the same hours. And so Facebook is really a tool to utilize, I think, in trying to bring all these people together. And secondly, it's been my experience when talking with legislators that they sometimes don't understand that sometimes some county has it really going on and everybody's collaborating, and they think that's the model for every county in the state. And they don't realize that, it's just some really good people power in this county that's making things really hum. But if you don't have it in this county, it's not going to happen. And so trying to have more of a strategic response on a county level would be really helpful. Let me move on to question two. For those of us who do not work in the fields of food insecurity and community supports and don't interact with people who struggle to access nutritious food for themselves and their families, what common misconceptions are there that you'd like for us to know? What are we getting wrong or may not understand about food insecurity?
Kevin and Michael both made a very interesting and valid point, especially talking about food insecurity or hunger, and especially a lot of what some people experienced in the recent this past year of really doesn't matter maybe what you drive or what your appearance or what maybe previous conception may have been. I said there's a lot of folks that are facing food insecurity, facing hunger, that maybe hadn't before, but being able to have those resources out. We're doing some different community conversations around stigma in general, but really trying to just have, as we incorporate or again kind of layer that into in a lot of our programming, having those conversations to kind of increase accepting possibly. As we was talking about, Cabell County isn't really one of our areas, but Logan is and has Southern, the community college. But, that's definitely a population over the last year, as I've worked with some of our colleagues in Cabell, of college students that we oftentimes don't think about that are really struggling with some of the food insecurity and access. So like I said, I guess just looking at some of those populations that we don't often maybe think about, how can we reach out there?
Thank you, David. Michael or Kevin?
I could pop in. Thinking the assumption that if a county has a great food bank or a county has a school system that's really committed to getting food out to people, that there's still not problems with some people having access. I kind of emphasized over and over again, you go way, way up a holler and people people have transportation difficulties. I mean, we've got kids who live up hollers that school buses can't even get to. They have to walk a sizable thing. So I think that just because, I mean, Kelly, you pointed out that the legislators kind of think of, oh, well, this county does it. Doesn't everybody do it that way? Well, even the counties that do it really well, still, that doesn't mean everybody in that county has the real access. And you know, somehow getting people to sit down together and say, you know, who's being left behind. Because I do think, if there's a great nonprofit in a county, people assume that it's going to work, and it's even the best I've ever seen in this state. There's always an isolated holler, or you know, like in Charleston, you'd think there's tons and tons of resources, but if you live in South Park, you do not necessarily have access to much in the way of resources.
That's a great point. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I wanna tap on both of those. I agree with what both of them said about David talking about the students at colleges. One thing that we've seen is food pantries increase for college students during COVID. These young people are you know, living at home in a lot of cases, going to school. So just because someone is able to pay for college or has gotten the opportunity to go does not mean that they are not dealing with food insecurities on campus and back home. Second thing is that, you know, every community in our state, no matter where we've put our arms here with Mountaineer Food Bank. You look at Mon County, people go to Morgantown, they think, you know, Morgantown's an awesome place to live. You don't see a lot of large communities of low income, but those pockets of hunger and food insecurity are all over. So one thing that people think is that someone else will get the food there. We've got to work together so that we are that someone else. A lot of times we are too dependent on someone else or believing someone else is taking care of that need and not investigating it enough. So those are misconceptions that people see around them, you know, in their homes and in their local areas.
It's a great point. Thank you, Kevin. And Carla made a point, travel 2 blocks on the west side of Charleston will make all the difference in access to food and healthcare. Great points. Thank you for that. And then we got 2 great questions in the Q&A. One is from John. He says, I was an elementary teacher in Barber County until COVID. I've since begun moving into a community support role as a youth drug misuse prevention specialist. So many of the items you have mentioned have a direct impact on susceptibility to drug misuse. One of the things I am seeing is an increased number of kids who are homeschooling. Our district has lost a number of kids. How are you all trying to address reaching these kids and families?
We have served kids virtually and in person, and we have what we call mask to mask virtual, with kids who have formal tie-ins and access, and then what we have remote learning, where we're getting out up the hollers with that. And we're not going back from that at the point, you know, that everybody technically can get together mask to mask. We're going to keep on not only reaching out to those families who are being homeschooled, because the lovely thing about Office of Child Nutrition, they don't care if your kids are in school or not. The other thing that we've learned that we're going to have to figure out how to replace when COVID emergency funding dries out is Office of Child Nutrition during the school year does have some limits, but in the summers it's 0 through 18. Some of the services we have, some state funding streams want only school age kids involved. So we've used COVID relief funds to be able to cover the cost of materials going out to little kids, and we're not ever turning back from that. Rather than saying that the point of entry for services is the single kid signing up for a program, once that kid comes in, we're reaching out and working with the whole family. And we have found, you know, the families respond, and there's an uptick in parent guardian support and participation, but you got to get out into those hollers, or you got to go around the housing development. But it is possible, and people will hang in there with you. I think we've probably distributed 100,000 meals since last March. And the Office of Child Nutrition paid for 90% of them.
Great, thank you. David?
That is a a definite need, especially we're looking at the number of students that are officially homeschooling right now, continuing to increase. One in, part in response to the recent pandemic, and I really don't see that going down in the upcoming years with some of the different changes that are going to be available to families. When Michael mentioned the counseling project we worked on a few years ago, and at that time in Lincoln County, there was less than 30 official homeschool students and families. That number has continued to grow significantly. A couple years ago, we did work with and reach out with a homeschool association that kind of covered the Lincoln, Boone, Logan area to try and deliver some resources and programming, and just that we included that, make sure to reach out to that population. In recent years, we need to really step up that game, because as more families continue to go that route, I don't see the connection of them automatically going into that homeschool association. So how can we kind of work with the schools to, I don't know, have a list of that, those families, but to somehow reach out and make sure that we are including those, individuals with programming, or inviting them to programming.
Okay, great. It's a great point, David. We've got another question in the Q&A from an anonymous attendee that says, I live in a county that has limited access to regular grocery store. There's a Walmart in the county. For me, that is a minimal of a 45-minute drive. But I notice the increased cost of healthy choices at the grocery store. In comparison, as example, when I drive to the Eastern Panhandle, the prices in a grocery store in Martinsburg were much, much cheaper for the produce, fruits and vegetables, as many other items. So cost is a huge obstacle for many residents, I think. How can we address that? That's a tough one.
Try and get people gardening. My fantasy is that everybody raises sweet potatoes and winter squash. My wife and I are still eating winter squash and sweet potatoes from last season. Kids will get excited about cherry tomatoes and little baby cucumbers. And you can do it even if you're pretty busy. I mean, Extension also has done some reliefs and trying to encourage people. But even if they're going to do having some of that happen through some more home gardening. That doesn't work for everybody, but I think I think we were down at one point to less than 10% of West Virginians gardening, which when I think of when I moved here in 1978, everybody, you could drive up the country road, everybody had gardens. That is steadily increasing, but that is one piece. And then, I think us really pushing to support work like Kevin's work and trying to help the food banks bring in as much healthy produce as possible, because the local Piggly Wiggly is not going to bring down its prices for healthy food, in my opinion.
One thing that we've done in some cases, and a lot of our agencies do, is provide seeds for gardening. And then also, I've learned this personally, just growing a garden. You don't have to grow everything. Find you a couple items that can grow good, in some of the places that you live, and that that you'll use, will help drive down costs immensely. That if someone loves tomatoes, then you focus on 2, 3, 4, 5 tomato plants. I think that has been really important. So we try to in our FFP program, we try to talk about those type of things when it comes to gardening. Our agencies, we talk about from raising chickens to depending on where you are, to gardening, to doing whatever you can to supplement some of your own cost, and we assist agencies in some of that. We've also, one thing that we've also done at the food bank, our goal is always food. And that's what we push, but we do have other items that we provide through the food bank to agencies that will also help lessen costs. Detergents, house cleaning products, different things like that that are donated or that we find that are purchased that agencies can use to supplement some of those other costs that people can focus more on their food. It doesn't work for everybody, but I mean, I think it assists some people in that area.
I got to mention Extension will do your soil analysis for free. And Try This, which is an organization, Kelly, if people don't know about it, you get a link to, has many grants and community groups. We've had Dave come in and do a canning workshop, and then with the Try This grant, get the money to buy canning equipment or freezing equipment for families. So they can also preserve and have those healthy foods throughout the school year.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Reach out to your county extension office. They have a calendar there that can help you with all of your garden questions and needs. We did also, with the family nutrition program, sponsored seeds going out with the Grow This Challenge last year that completely just exploded. And again, this year, being able to send out seed packets, like I said, across the state to push and promote some of that supplemental growing. But, also with some of our lessons and keeping in mind, because, when you do have an abundance of fresh produce, you are going to have to be able to do something with it, typically pretty quick. So, looking at what are some of those staple items that, we can get added through either the food bank or some of those, and again, dollar store type of establishments. And looking at canned and frozen as an alternative, what we can do with some of that, making some of our meals, again, healthier, but looking at the, the nutritional analysis and what we're taking in. Again, a lot of times I think we maybe cross nutrition and insecurity maybe a little. So like I said, being able to find what we have and be able to meet that need and make it as healthy as possible.
That's a great point. I think we're at the bottom of the hour. And so I want to thank everyone, especially our panelists, the Palatine Foundation of Huntington, our attendees, and for this great conversation. It was really very helpful, especially the questions from those who are attending. We hope you'll to see you on social media so we can keep the conversation into next week, where we'll take the same topic from the healthcare provider's perspective. So with that, thanks again. Have a great day, everyone, and see you next Tuesday.